Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jody Lynn Craven.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Now, of course, we're halfway through the week here. We record this on a Wednesday, and we're nearing the end of January, which puts us about 3, almost 4 months since the beginning of my little life change that started a few months ago that I've talked about to listeners. And we're not going to go into any details about that today, but just wanted to let everybody know overall things are moving in the right direction, but I am experiencing more roller coaster. And it's a reminder that even when especially when you're going through the kinds of tumult I've been going through, you're going to get a roller coaster anyway. That's just going to be part of the ride. But even when you've got it smoothed out, it's still going to be bumpy. And so the real challenge is, how do you navigate the bumps? Right?
Beautiful question.
Yeah. Because that's really what it comes down to, right? Those bumps are going to come. It's not like you can just jump out of the roller coaster. First of all, it's dangerous. Second of all, you got onto it to take the ride, right? Mm-hmm. So how are you going to navigate it? And that's where our choice comes in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
opportunity
is sometimes it knocks you on the head, but it knocks.
Yep. That's right.
That's my initial thought for the day as we get started here. And Jody Lynn, how are things up in the frigid zones of Canada? Are you? I mean, this is kind of a little bit of warmer winter than normal, but is that really warm where you are?
Well, ish. I mean, It is warmer this week. It's warmer. We did have a cold snap like a couple weeks ago. That was awful. And apparently we have Siberia weather coming once again. So we'll see what happens in the week to come. But as of today, we are in the plus territory. It's only plus 1 degree Celsius, but it counts. We're in plus territory. I'm always geared towards the positive. So, I mean, I choose to live here and I haven't chosen to move anywhere else. So again, back to your roller coaster, I'm on. And there's certain things that I absolutely love about winter, so I will choose to focus on those things first.
Well, especially since you're not in frozen nose hair territory, because when you're in plus 1 centigrade, that's nowhere near that. You have to be down in minus 20 or something like that before it's like, oh yeah, that's cold.
Yeah, that's later this week.
That's later this week, right?
It's coming in the future.
Coming in the future, that's right. And our guest today is in exactly the opposite kind of zone. She's in a much more temperate area. She's in South Georgia. I mean, that's like, ooh, this is the perfect time of year to be in Southern Georgia. Hashondra Smith, how you doing? Thank you for joining us today.
I'm great. How are you?
Doing fine. I mean, now give us a lay of the land weather-wise. What are the temperatures like right now?
So I live in Southeast Georgia, where you may have to have a heavy coat on early in the morning. Midday, you can just have a light jacket on.
Okay.
I could wear some shorts right now. I actually have on a mini skirt. So, I love the weather here in Southeast Georgia. You just never know what you're going to get. It's like that roller coaster. It's up and down, but you live with it and you roll with it.
And this is the time of year to be in Georgia because, I mean, it's ideal most of the time. It's just, it's not too hot, not too cold. Like, I like it.
Right. We were just at the beach the other day, climbing a lighthouse, my daughter and I. So
really, wow.
We have really great days still throughout the winter.
That is fabulous. Now, Hashondra is all about not overthinking yourself. And we're going to learn more about what that's all about. But Hashondra, before we even get there, tell us your story. How did you get to the point where you became the don't overthink me person?
Well, I started my journey by actually being an overthinker.
Oh, okay. So you're an expert in this.
I think that having that experience allows me to help people to stop overthinking. So I am an author. I'm a mom. I am a nonprofit founder, a business owner. So I wear a lot of titles. And sometimes getting through those titles, I'm overthinking the process. I'm overthinking the job. I'm overthinking the task. And I just had to slow down and really understand who I was as a person and what I was doing with those titles. And I noticed that a lot of people in society are overthinkers.
Well, that leads to my question. Why do we overthink?
I think that we overthink, and this is just my personal opinion. I think that we overthink because of fear. I think that we overthink because we discount ourselves as people. We don't really understand our power that we possess inside of us and how to really express it, how to kind of connect the body with the mind and actually get the act done.
Yeah, that does make sense. It also kind of fuels a secondary question for me, which is, all right, now that we understand to a degree why we do this, I guess the second part of it is, how do we know that we're doing it? What's the clue?
One thing that clues me to let me know that I'm overthinking is when I am consistently speeding or I'm doing a lot, but not really getting a lot done. That's one way that I kind of measure out whether I'm in an overthinking state. And one tip or tool that I give to my clients when I'm speaking with them about overthinking is make a list, make sure that you're getting through your list. And if you're not getting through your list or you're not actually completing your task, 99% of the time, you're probably overthinking the task.
That's a good.
So where's your energy going? Is it going into the task or is it going into thinking about the task? I was just, before we met today, I was just doing some emails and I actually had to use my own tips. And I do it daily. You know, I have to live out my own tips and my own tools. And had to get through some emails, just had a lot going on. And I'm like, stop. You done thought for 10 minutes about sending these emails when in those 10 minutes, you could have sent out all 3 of the emails that you needed to send out. So once we slow our minds down and we acknowledge what we're doing, then that really helps to get the task done.
And when our minds are racing like that, we're kind of in a defensive mode, aren't we?
Yes.
It's more about some sort of self-protection because we don't feel confident about what we're doing, or there's an extraneous circumstances going on that's influencing us. Like, oh, geez, I don't really feel like that's the right direction to go, and I don't really want to do that right now, and and then we just kind of build it up, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the challenge that I think everybody runs into every day. Of course, except for Jody Lynn, she never does. But
oh yeah, right.
I guess that medical term would be anxiety.
Yeah. Oh man. For me, it's when I feel like I'm spinning my wheels and I'm not moving forward. That's when I know I'm overthinking it or I'm overcomplicating it. And for me, most of the time it comes from this fear of not knowing enough. I don't know enough. I need more information. I need the perfect words. It's me trying to be perfect rather than, okay, let's just throw some shit on the wall, see what sticks, make it sound better, like go from there, just one foot in front of the other. But I love how you put that, how you use your tools every day. I think that's the sign of a great teacher because we're human and we're not perfect. So that's what these tools are for. And you're not, trying to be a robot. You're trying to work with your humanness.
Yes. And I think that's a lot of reasons that I'm able to touch a lot of my clients is because I am transparent. And I always tell them, don't look at me as perfect. Don't put me on a pedestal and think that I'm not supposed to mess up. Because another tool that I use is I grace myself. I grace myself daily. And I grace myself and let myself know, hey, you were put here to live. So live your life. And in the process of living, you learn. So in order to learn, you have to be unlearned, and we have to be teachable every moment throughout the day and just grace ourselves no matter what level we on, because there's always some form of wisdom that's out there that we don't know that we need to know. And in order to stay strong, you have to practice your tools. You have to implement what you teach.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very true. Before we tuned in today, I was listening to an audiobook by Carolyn Mace. I don't know if you guys know Carolyn Mace, but her book is called Energy Anatomy, this particular one. She's put out about a dozen books. And she was talking about a really interesting phenomenon that we've kind of grazed upon it at times here, but we don't really spend a lot of time on it. And she calls it connecting into your tribe. Your tribe is, it's your family, it's the global culture, it's your locality, it's people who have, similar interests. So those are all your tribes. And all of our tribes have rules. And I didn't really think about it this way, but I think she's right. They not only do they have rules that are designed to keep you safe. Mm-hmm. Which really means that they're working against you. But they're designed to keep you safe. And because they're designed to keep you safe, we as humans, have a very strong tendency to defer to the tribal rules. And when we defer to the tribal rules, I think one of the things we end up doing is overthinking because, well, we're deferring to the tribal rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll have to admit, I'm a rule breaker. I have been a rule breaker all of my life, but I wasn't implementing that characteristic about me into my life. But I know when I started, I was really struggling with my spiritual beliefs at one point. And so I had to really implement that tool of breaking rules. And in my book, I actually call it living in my okay. And I talk about how I had to tell myself, it's okay not to believe what you once believed. Like, it's okay to change what you believe because of growth. And so I really had to step back and ask myself, why do you believe this faith that you're a part of? And I couldn't answer the question. So I began to just remove everything. I was like, okay, God, you got to help me here. If I didn't have this Bible, if no one ever told me, how would I know that you're real? And it actually directed me to science. And the more that I studied history, the more that I studied about the universe, the closer that I became to God. And, just really starting my spiritual journey and not going with just what I was told, not going with the rules of family, not going with the rules of religion, but breaking off and having an understanding for myself. And that was really fearful. And I can only tell y'all a part of how I overthunk in that process.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, I've been down a similar road myself, and I know, when you're pushing against religion, that's one of the big tribes. Mm-hmm. That's one of the tribes that really dominate us. And when you're basically saying, I'm not really fitting into this, that's stepping out. Mm-hmm. That's risky, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And when you're taking that risk, it's scary.
It is. And it's scary because I lost friends in the process, mm-hmm. A lot of familiarity. I had to branch out and really do things on my own. And I had to figure out who I was throughout the process, the authentic version of myself, not who people told me I was, not who people wanted me to be, but just really being myself. And when I tell people this story and just kind of take them down memory lane or take them down my journey, they're kind of like, you? Because people see me as a strong individual. And I'm like, yeah, I have a journey as well. I live, again, don't put me on that pedestal.
Yeah, pedestals are not comfortable. They're not fun places to be. You can't win on a pedestal. Isn't that an interesting thing? It's not possible to win when you're on a pedestal. The only thing you can do is lose. Mm-hmm. I still have trouble wrapping my head around that sometimes, but it's true. There's no way to win when you're on a pedestal. But even more than that, the fact that you were taking those steps, that you were basically stretching beyond the realm of comfort, was, first of all, something to be admired. And also, it's where the growth happens too, mm-hmm. right? Because when you're challenging the authorities, you, among other things, in this case, you're talking also about the development of your own spiritual belief system, which I always find to be fascinating. I love hearing different people's story about how they evolved their own spiritual system, because I know that anyone who does that is actually connecting.
Yes.
Not the false kind, not the kind, everybody is in church or everybody's in, some sort of a group doing the same thing, but no, you're actually connecting.
Yes. Very much connected. I always say if there's 5,000 people, there should be 5,000 religions, because your perception is not going to be my perception, and my journey is not going to be your journey, and how you connect with God might not be how I connect with God. So I'm very open, and I love diversity. And I never tell people, oh, well, that's not the way you're supposed to pray, or don't meditate that way, or, don't talk to God that way. That's disrespectful. If that's the relationship y'all have, then that's the relationship y'all have. And I also look to the animal kingdom, and I look to plants, just how things developed in Mother Nature, to see how I'm supposed to develop. And that helped a lot on my journey.
Give us a clue. Give us a detail, an example.
For instance, with just the seed of a tree. We have this little seed, it's planted in the ground, and it becomes this very big, strong tree. And when I was studying, the concept of just something so small growing into something so great was mind blowing to me, because I've never thought of a seed that way. And it was in the little things, the simplicity of just this little seed that really helped me to develop my faith. I'm like, okay, I've put this in your hands, God. I've planted this in the ground. I really don't know what I'm doing. I know that you're real, but I really need to grow. So I started kind of measuring my spiritual beliefs or my spiritual growth to the growth of a tree. And so I'm like, okay, now I see something sprouting out. I'm starting to understand who you are. I'm starting to understand that history says it took billions of years for the earth to form, but in the Bible it says it was one day. So I'm back and forth between what I was taught, what I'm experiencing, and the whole time I'm measuring it up to how a tree grows and how there's different parts of a tree. You have the root, you have the branches, you have the leaves that develop, they grow off. So there's seasons in my life, and the winter, the tree is bare. In the spring, it's coming back. So I started thinking about the seasons that I've went through in my lifetime and how I go through those seasons every year and finding out the cycles. I noticed the cycles in my life. Like this happened 5 years ago, and now I feel like it's happening to me again. I feel like this lesson was presented to me 3 months ago. Now I'm having the same lesson, but I learned 3 months ago. So now I'm going to implement what I learned in order for me to grow even more and get my branches even stronger so that I can develop into a stronger tree.
I like that.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, but it also cues a thought for me too, because I realized it can actually go the other direction. Let me. You don't really know what I'm saying, so let me try to find a way to rephrase that. Let's take your concept. Don't overthink. All right. Mm-hmm. Does don't overthink apply in the realm of religion and or spirituality?
I believe that it does, because one of the slogans that I use is don't overthink yourself out of being yourself, just be. And one thing that I say to myself is I am that I am, not overthinking who God is to me, not overthinking who I'm supposed to be, but just being. And as I said, I grew up very in a religious environment. And so we've always had this image of what God looks like and what Jesus looks like and what the Holy Spirit means. I had to literally declutter my mind of all those things. So now when I talk about my spiritual beliefs and when I visualize God, I visualize fire. And that helps me not to put so much of a face on or gender on who God is. And I try not to use gender, but it's just conditioned to say he. But honestly, I believe that God has no gender. And that tells us that in the Bible. And then when I think about Jesus, I think about light. I think that's how Jesus is perceived in my mind as light. And not I ain't gonna say watered down image, but the watered down image that's sometimes presented. And also when I think about the spirit, I think about water. And then when I think about my physical body, I think about earth. So I use the elements to help me not to be so focused on the physical appearance and what is so normal in order for me to stay in a position of peace. And also just to stay in a position of saying, okay, God, this is who you are to me. This makes sense to me. This might not make sense to anybody else, but I'm comfortable here and I'm connected with you here, which is most important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that connection is vitally important.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say, Jody Lynn, I'm a little surprised. Normally you're just jumping right in. No, you're just singing very quietly. So.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so brilliant using nature as your guide to learning more about God or spirit or the universe, however you want to put it. Because I do the same thing with abundance. You really look at nature and plants growing, and it wasn't, working so hard to get all the paperwork done to get the money in the account. Like you look at birds and, they're finding food and they're helping one another. You look at plants and all of a sudden the seed magically grows and its environment is enriched, especially to help it grow certain types of seeds. Like even I just learned just recently, I don't know how long ago this was. I know Walt and I have talked about it before, but, you can use classical music and with plants to help them grow. And the science behind it is the classical music mimics birds, and what the birds are actually doing, go figure, is when they're singing, they're opening up the stoma of the plants, so that helps them grow and take in, carbon dioxide and go through photosynthesis and all of these beautiful and incredible things. So I think it's magical that you use that as your tool on, I may be a seed, but I have the potential to be this giant tree that is so profound. And as you were describing it, I was imagining, the roots going down deep and creating this stability and being grounded and being nurtured and loved by Mother Nature and all of these things. So I was just really captivated in the visuals that you gave me, and it was blowing my mind. So that's why I've been sitting here quietly.
One thing about the bird that's so unique and that we can apply to our spiritual growth, the bird knows when to stay. The bird also knows when to leave. And that just goes with intuition. And that's one thing that I have been very keen on in my life, is being intuitive and being able to know, okay, guys, should I stay here? Okay, self, what are we doing right now? Do we need to be here? Do you feel comfortable here? Are you in your element? Is this uncomfortable for growth? Are these growing pains, or are you uncomfortable because you're not supposed to be here? So with the birds, they're in their element. They know when to stay. They know when to go. And we as people, we have to be intuitive to know where we're supposed to be. And if we're in that right flow, then it helps with getting that abundance. It helps with getting the generational wealth. It helps with maintaining your peace. It helps with mindset changes when you're where you're supposed to be. And a lot of people, they're just not where they're supposed to be, which is why they're not growing, or they're getting up too much, because sometimes we can be in the season where we're supposed to be purging, but it's just like harvest. I want more money. No, you're supposed to be giving right now, because in the next season, that's when your harvest is supposed to come. So I love the birds. I sit on my porch and I drink my water or my tea and I listen to the birds. And sometimes that's just my safe place to remind myself of just how thankful we are, or how blessed we are as individuals. We're not homeless. We got food. You're in a cold environment. You're not cold. There's heat inside, because you're in your element. You're where you're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. One thing that keeps popping up for me is this uncertainty or uncomfortable feeling. And I think that a lot of people in society feel uncomfortable, even looking for direction within, trusting their intuition, going within to find God or to find the answers that they need, because our society has constantly told us you have to be in control, and to be in control you must have the answers, you must know this or that or whatever. So we're constantly fighting for control over everything and knowing exactly what's going to happen next. And then we cut off our superpower of seeing the future or being in tune with what is actually happening in this environment, because we're so focused on, I must have this control. I think that's interesting.
One of the steps that I took, and it was a very personal step, a while back, I was trying to figure out my definition of faith, not what I was told. I like to define things myself to know exactly what it means to me, so that I can measure up to that definition. So I was trying to figure out what faith was. And I'm like, okay, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Okay, I get it. I get it. But it really wasn't resonating with me. It wasn't like that definition that says, this is what faith is to you, Hashondra. So I went out to this pond that's not too far from my house, and I took my little feet up yoga thing out there, and I'm just, meditating and looking at the water, and I'm having my conversation. I'm like, okay, I need you to really speak to me. And I went to look up the word faith on my phone. Guys, my phone would not work. I had no phone reception. Anything to the outside world, it was like, no, I just need your attention right now. But before I left, off of the pond, I really got a hold to what faith means to me. And so my definition right now is faith is knowing God can because of what he's already done. So when I'm struggling with that control issue, because I definitely have a control issue, I'm a Leo, we like to have control of things. So when I'm struggling with that control issue, or I'm struggling in my faith, or trying to figure it out before it comes, I'm like, okay, relax, Hashondra. You already know that you've been in this situation before, and what you're thinking, what you're overthinking about never happens. So calm down, relax. It's okay. Have faith. Stay in your peace. Know that you know the end result. You know the goal. This is just a part of the process. This is a test. This is for you, an opportunity to show who you are and what's inside of you to be exposed to the world. So just calm down. So I have to tell myself, faith is knowing that God can because of what he's already done. Look at my past and know that it's already been done. It can be redone. It's okay. And it's going to be redone better because you're a different version of you. You're a better version of you.
I love that you asked yourself that question. What does faith mean to me? And I love your definition. That's beautiful.
Really, really good.
Mine's very similar. I even wrote it down. I wrote yours down. And then I was like, oh, what does faith mean to me? Because I always say this phrase, faith within faith. And explaining it is a little bit more difficult, like intellectually. Describing what I mean by that. I know the feeling, but for me, it's that I am always provided for. I look back at my life and I can clearly see it's always worked out for the better. Always, every single time. So faith in faith for me is that I am always and always will be provided for.
And that's just relinquishing that control. And it's so hard sometimes. Yeah. Like, even though we know, it's just like, oh, what are we going to do? But we're always taken care of, like that sparrow, like that bird.
I also noticed what you said when you said that things that we feared almost never come true. And it can be really hard to remember that, especially when you're in the midst of something that is fairly traumatic and close to your heart and feels really, really scary at that time. But the truth is, you're right. What we fear really, really comes true. It's an amazing thing that we, despite knowing that, we're still able to just stay tapped into, gotta stay safe, gotta protect myself, even though we know the opposite. It's just an amazing thing. Something else I wanted to ask you about too, because your thing is about don't overthinking, right? And, or don't overthink. And I have this thing that I like to do where, cause we humans often express things in terms of, don't do this, avoid that, stop doing this. And I always like to flip it around, like, okay, so what's the alternative? How do I say that differently? And I'm kind of stumbling on that. So instead of don't overthink, what? Can you answer that?
When you're not overthinking, are you asking me what to do instead of overthinking?
Yeah, like how do I think about the phrase, instead of, if I wanted to replace the phrase don't overthink me or don't overthink, what do I replace it with?
You replace it with the opposite of your feeling. That's exactly what I do. If you're feeling fear, speak faith. If you're feeling sad, speak happy thoughts. So that's one thing that I do, just not focusing on the overthinking, but also to focus on the words, focus on the power that you have within. So I guess a great example of this would be, I have an 18-year-old that drives. I don't know if you guys have kids.
I love the way you said that. Oh my God, my 18-year-old drives. This is terrible.
So, and it's not the worst thing in the world. But I've lost a child before. So that kind of bothers me from time to time. It's like, now my 18-year-old, she's out here, she's driving, she's in college, she's on her own. And sometimes I just start thinking, oh my God, she's going to get in an accident. Or, oh my God, somebody's going to kidnap her. Or something's going to happen in her dorm room and I'm not going to be there. I'm 3 hours up the road. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I have to stop myself. And so when I was really going through it bad, when she first left for college, I literally every morning I got up and said, my children are protected. My children are healthy. My children are wealthy. My children are whole. My children are trained. My children are protected. They are protected. And I just continuously just kept saying that. Instead of thinking about all of the bad things, I started using my power words. and affirming what I knew already was, instead of focusing on what I knew not to be true. So instead of focusing on that overthinking, just focusing on your power words.
Yeah. While you were describing that, a story came to mind, actually. I've been taking some dance classes lately. I'm very much into social dancing. And the teacher who teaches the class is a young woman in her, I would guess, mid-30s, something like that. She has a couple of young children. And often, she'll tell us a little thing about, what happened with the kids at Christmas or that kind of thing during a class. In the class that we had on Monday, one of the people in the class said, or I guess he was doing something. He was doing something in the dance style, and she pointed out, do this instead. He said, "You saw that?" And she said, "Yeah, I saw that." And he couldn't believe it. You really did see that? Because he thought she was faced away or something like that. And so I chimed in with a joke. I said, "Yeah, well, she's a mom. She knows everything, and she sees and she hears everything." And I got a good laugh out of that one. But I thought about that when you were telling your story, because your daughter is now, far, far away. You can't know and see everything anymore. That superpower is like, stripped away from you. And that's a thing.
Not totally stripped. I'm a dreamer. And most of the time, if something is wrong with my daughter, I can sense it. If something's going on with either one of my children, I can pretty much sense it. And I believe that my ancestors speak to me. And usually if there's something going on with my daughter, my grandma appears in my dream. And that's who my daughter was the closest to, because I was a teen mom. So my mom and my grandparents helped me raise her. And she's just a village child. So everybody helped with her growth and her development. So she was really attached to my grandparents, really attached to my grandma. And I feel like my grandma's the ancestor that really looks over my daughter. So if I start thinking about her, or she starts coming into my view, or if I start dreaming about her, I know that something's going on with my daughter that I need to handle. And it never fails. Again, intuition.
Okay. Well, so then you've just described how you do have that information available to you. So I think you're also illustrating how even when we have the information, we can still scare ourselves.
Yes. And it's false. It's just false evidence appearing real. Fear, and fear is what blocks a whole lot of things. I was looking at a TV show the other day, and it was so ironic because what was said on the TV show, a person that really implements positivity into my life said it to me as well. And they said, ignore the fear, but not the feeling. And you feel the feeling, but don't, ignore the fear. And when you focus on the feeling and start talking to yourself, calming that feeling or embracing that feeling, depending on what type of feeling it is, then the fear just kind of disappears. And again, using your power words.
Mm-hmm. And I think when you go into that fear mode, your body is going into the limbic system, the fight, flight, freeze, and it cuts off your capacity to be logical about anything. So I love how you said that, you got to feel the fear. Yeah. But you don't need to embrace all of the rabbit hole that it's trying to take you down with. Okay, allow it to move through you, and then you'll be reconnected with all of your, superpowers, if you will, that intuition, the logical brain that's saying, like, that's crazy.
In my book, there's a quote that I use. It's okay to feel, but it's also okay to heal. Acknowledge that you're hurt. Acknowledge that these things are happening, but also let your mind know, I'm going to heal from this. This is just a moment. This is just a feeling for the moment. I can get over that. It's okay. It's just a lesson. It's just life. There's ups and downs, and also just gracing ourselves to know that we're going to have ups and downs. We're going to have highs and lows. And once we put it in our minds that that's going to happen, it's all about response. How are you responding to those highs and lows? Just like a video game. There's going to be levels that you fail, but you try again. Now, some levels you might just, there's some levels that you're going to have to repeat over and over again, depending, or you might just croak out, but we just hope that doesn't happen. But it's just highs and lows and expecting those things to happen and the responses to them. Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned the book, which I believe is Unattached, the final season. Give us a little tidbit about that. First of all, where did the book come from, and what's the messaging?
So Unattached, the final season, is my 20-year journey of discovering the authentic me in the area of romantic love. So back in 2018, I published my first book, which was called Attached. And it was my story about how I lost my virginity at 16 and the emotional trauma that it caused. So most of the time when you're listening about sex and you're younger, everybody tells you about the STDs, but I felt like nobody told me about the emotional side of losing my virginity. And, you know, they tell you about teen pregnancy. And of course, like I told you, I was a teen mom, but I wish somebody would have explained to me the emotional part of losing my virginity. They'll say, oh, you know, that's not what to do, but nobody ever explained it. So I really wanted to explain that emotional trauma. So last year, August 8th, I actually put out my book, Unattached, the final season, and I go deeper into the story. So in Unattached, the final season, it has the book attached in it, which it's my 20-year-old self basically telling the story of my teenage years. And it's my 32-year-old self giving my 20-year-old self advice.
Oh, nice.
So in Unattached, the final season, my 36-year-old self is going back and basically seeing if my 32-year-old self is giving my 32-year-old self advice.
Wow. How cool. What a cool idea to take the previous book and tie it directly. I mean, not just refer to it, tie it directly into the second book. That's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So there was the 32-year-old with the advice that I actually gave when in my 36-year-old years. I just went more in detail about how I actually believe and showing that those 4 seasons of growth, because it was 4 years. And of course, in 4 years, you have 4 different seasons. So just showing that seasonal growth and developing, and then also leaving room for me to grow. Because one of the things that I love about the book is I'm very transparent, but I'm also letting people know I'm still growing. The growing process never stops. You're always going to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask the basic question there. What inspires and causes growth?
I think that mindset changes inspires and causes growth. Of course, we're just going to live daily. That's going to be a given. The only other option to live in is death. So we have to grow daily. And I think that one thing that really just inspires growth is development of the mind. You know, your responses to your daily life, learning the lessons. Do you want to even grow? I've noticed that some people don't want to grow. They're so complacent with where they are. They're complacent in their ideas. They're complacent in their environment that they don't want to grow. It's not that they can't grow. It's just that it's hard to grow in an environment where that's not conducive to growth. So I think that's one thing that just inspires it. It all has to do with the person's mind. I seen something online the other day, and there was 2 people. They were in this hole, and they were both in the same exact hole, and they're both like, God help me, God help me. And so a lightning bulb strikes down, and the tree that was between them splits in half. So one side gets half of the tree, one side gets the other half of the tree. So the person on the left uses the tree branches to build a ladder and climbs herself out the hole. The other person says, oh my God, you know, why is this more? This is more than I can bear. What did I do? You know, just complaining. So it's how we look at life. Again, mindset changes that inspires our growth. And that person on the right that was just still complaining, they may never get it. And some people just never get it. Some people are never inspired to grow, no matter what they do, and they don't do the work to grow.
Why do you think that is? Do you have a theory about that?
The only thing that I can say is environment, or just not wanting to deal with yourself. It's so easy to pinpoint the issues when it comes to other people, but it's so hard to look yourself in the mirror. I remember I had this dream, and in the dream, I was in this church, and I ran to the front of the church, and I looked in the mirror, and I was beautiful. I ran back to the door, came back and looked in the mirror, and I was so ugly that I could barely stand to look at myself.
Wow.
So it's just, I think some people don't want to really take that hard look at themselves. They don't want to ask themselves those questions that's really going to produce growth. It's hard to say, hey, you're messing up. And even at the beginning of this book, I talk about how I was in a victimized state. Oh, I'm the victim. And I was like, girl, you are not the victim. You're acting like this victim, but you got to change you. Nobody else can change you but you. So I had to get out of that victimized role. And some people are so comfortable with being a victim. Some people are so comfortable in their environment that they don't want to get out of that role. They don't want to look at themselves and ask those hard questions. And not only ask those hard questions, but answer those hard questions honestly.
Yeah, that's true. Because ultimately what they're really avoiding facing, is that a good way to say it?
Yeah.
What they're really avoiding is that they themselves are the common denominators of their own lives.
Exactly.
Which is that's to be perfectly honest, that's a hard concept to achieve at times. I mean, for anybody, regardless of what their circumstances are, it's just that's hard to face.
Sometimes I think that it's hard because we think it's hard.
Right.
It's just like working out. Yes, I want the body. Yes, I want the change, but I don't want the discipline to get up and go to the gym every morning. But then I want to sit here and complain because the next individual is happy about their development and growth, or they're happy about the fact that they've been working out for a month and now they can wear the little skinny dress that they've been, trying to get into. But you're over here complaining. Not only you complaining, you're looking at other people complaining about their happiness because you don't want to put in the work to become happy. And how fair is that? So that's one thing. We just have to really be disciplined and really take that cold, hard look and say, I'm the problem. I want to change and I'm willing to do the work.
Well, I think it's also, and I'll speak for myself, and I've mentioned this many times before in the past, so listeners, if you've heard this for the umpteenth time, forgive me, but it took me a lot of years to realize that I could actually choose my emotional reaction to stuff. So you mentioned, being happy. I didn't think I had a lot of choice in the matter. For years, I thought, well, it's the event that causes my happiness or unhappiness. It's not me. Mm-hmm. I don't have any role in that. And I remember the first time it was, well, I remember roughly the first time it was suggested to me that I could have that kind of control. And I think I picked it up from an Abraham Hicks video, actually. And so I asked my wife about it at the time. And she said, well, why don't you do an experiment? I said, okay, what kind of experiment? Well, why don't you see if you can actually, shift your emotional response to a situation. I said, well, how do I go about doing that? She says, well, you're a walker. And I am. I like to take walks pretty much every day. She says, next time you're out walking, take a look at the nature around you and decide how you want to respond to it. Mm-hmm. Especially if you're not feeling it that day. Especially if you're not feeling it that day. Mm-hmm. And see if you can get yourself into a better place.
Yeah.
And so I tried it, and it was stunning to me. I mean, now I look back and it's kind of silly, but at the time it was really stunning to me.
I understand that. Wow. That was your aha moment.
Yeah, it was. It was an aha moment.
That was I was talking to a client the other day, and she said something. She said, oh, well, I can either be upset or I can be happy. Or I said, or you can see. She said, no, she said, I can be upset or I can be happy. I said, or you can create your own C and tell yourself, I don't know how to feel about this right now. I think that sometimes we box ourselves into it has to be A, B, or C, and we forget that we can create a D. Like, no, I'm going to create what I need to do and what's best for me in this moment. Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes people forget that they have the pen and can write their own story. It's not the story that has to be or just a common response to certain situations. Is being able to just take that pen and rewrite the situation to what you want it to be.
Yeah, I think that's profound. I think a lot of times in our society, we get stuck in that belief system that there's no way we can change it. Like we're a victim of our circumstances. And then all the other beliefs play into that. If you're a victim of something, a traumatic that has happened to you, for example, what does it mean letting go of that trauma? Like, does it mean that I forgive and let that person off the hook? We have all of these other thoughts that now get all bunged up in it and just keep us stuck. I can't do anything because any way I move, or there is no way to move forward. I'm stuck in this space. And I think it's beautiful, that aha moment of realizing I have the power to create something new, regardless of what's happening outside of myself.
Yeah, it's actually a bit of a shock. To be perfectly honest, it really is.
Totally. Yeah.
Like, oh my God, what? That's the feeling behind it.
I have definitely had my share of aha moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think they ever stop. No, you just keep learning more and more and more. And I think that also comes back to allowing yourself to keep choosing and giving yourself grace, because what you knew last week and what made sense to you last week may not make sense anymore today. And people will beat themselves up. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have known better. I should have, all of this. Well, you didn't. You didn't know. You did the best you could. And maybe you didn't even do the best you could. But okay, you can give yourself grace and choose to build a new future, take a new path, rather than, oh, well, I should have done that, and I'm going to stay in the grief of what I didn't do and bring that along with me, heavy baggage, to my next encounter, and the one after that, and the one after that. No, just let it go. Drop it. Okay. Now what? I get to do something new. It's a blank page this moment. It's not even the new day, but in this moment, I have a blank page to write whatever story I decide. That's powerful.
Right. That's a great point about a new day. It doesn't have to be a new calendar day. You create your new day. You create your new year. And I always tell people on my cycle, I know that January is typically the new year. But for me, October is my new year and March is my harvest season. Usually around March, it's like whatever I think, it just comes. And I have to be very careful about what I'm thinking and what I'm manifesting in that moment. Because sometimes I get things, I'm like, oh, I don't think I really wanted that. But I feel like I manifested it because things just really come super easy to me between like March and July all the time. And that was a part of learning my cycles.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea why that particular period of time is so effective for you?
Now, recently, I have been doing more studying with life path numbers, just trying to understand the energies, understand the solar system, understand, how the stars work, just that whole gist. And I can't say that I'm just well educated on it, but I'm just learning more and more, studying myself, understanding myself more by doing those things. So I don't have like an exact answer, but I'm pretty sure that has something to do with it.
So it's a work in progress is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's fascinating because I think we were talking about this a couple weeks, Walt.
We were,
about, the season right now at New Year's, it's where I am. It's winter, like hibernation mode, reflection mode, staying warm and eating, like making sure you're well fed, well hydrated, whatever. It's not a new creation. And for several years, I have felt out of alignment with that process of recreating my goals for January 1st and then actioning a plan. And then on the YouTube show that I'm a part of, we went into the Gregorian calendar versus, I don't remember what the other calendar was, but there's another calendar that was way back in the day saying the new year actually started March 25th on the equinox.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's kind of lining up with what you were saying.
And when I first seen the calendar that you're talking about, I don't know the name of it either. I was like, oh my gosh, maybe that's why in my mind, March is like my harvest season. Yeah. Maybe, that's the new calendar year. And I was speaking with a friend and I kept saying, well, I feel like October is, my new year. They're like, no, I feel like March is the new year. And we're back and forth. And we're both right because of different calendars and different seasons and just our perception of how we view what the beginning of a season is. Like which season is really the start.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that's the Chaldean calendar you guys are talking about.
Could be. I have no recollection of what it's called.
I'm great with the knowledge, but I'm not great with the names when it comes to calendars. Everything in history, there's just so much.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of calendars. It's true. It's true. I'm curious to look a little bit more at your book because of the title. Now, the unattached part, that makes sense because your first book was attached, and you actually include that in the story so people can see how you transition from attached to unattached. But what's the final season about?
Okay, so I talk about my romantic, like I said, I'm finding the authentic me in the area of romantic love. So my final season is actually talking about me dating again and knowing exactly what I want. So I just found out a year ago exactly how I want to date, who I want to date, and that I want to date. So this is a whole new season for me. And that was the end of that season of trying to figure out love. And I also have a soundtrack to my book. And one of the songs in it is Love Fight. And I finally got to that position where I want to fight for love, not fight for an individual, not fight for myself, but just fight for the concept of love. I always say that music is my first love and love is my first language. I just love love. I love the whole concept of every form of love. Love is just like really big for me. So I'm going to look at a person and love them beyond who they are. And that's just like my whole big thing. I love love. I'm a love lover.
Well, I love.
Yeah. When I saw that title, I said the final season. What resonated in my head was Star Trek, The Final Frontier.
There's never a final Star Trek, and there's never a final
Hashondra. but there is a parallel going on there, because the Final Frontier from the Star Trek perspective is outer space, and the Final Frontier from the Hashondra perspective is love, which is also it's just about as unlimited an exploration area. So there actually is a parallel going on there.
Yes,
that's really interesting. Okay, so the book is about the 32-year-old talking to the 16-year-old, and then the 36-year-old basically telling that story. What were some of the pieces of information that were transmitted from the older Hashondra to the younger Hashondra?
So one thing that I can tell you that this book is so universal. The topics are endless. I talk about everything from teen pregnancy to overcoming overthinking. I talk about basically having sex, but approving of it, but not mentally approving of it, if that makes sense. Like I consented to it with my body, but I wasn't consenting to it with my mind. I talk about a little bit about divorce. I talk about my experience of having to redefine family. Because when I grew up, I seen my grandparents, they were together forever, and I wanted that. And so when my first relationship didn't work out with my oldest daughter's father, I was devastated because I didn't want to be a statistic. I didn't want to have multiple children by different men and, all those things. So I had to rethink what family looked like. Another topic that I talk about is prevention. A lot of tips in preventing a lot of things. I always talk to my oldest daughter about that as well. There are preventative methods that you can take so that certain things don't happen. No, we can't control everything. That's not possible, but there are some things that we can control. And I know a lot of people don't like to talk about preventative methods when it comes to women and how they dress and how they present themselves. But I talk about it, and I talk about it boldly, because I tell them, if I'm dressed a certain way and I get in the car with some people I don't know, I have to also have in the back of my mind that something might happen to me that I don't want to happen to me, because I don't know these people. So how about let's just protect ourselves a little bit more, and let's stay with people that we know, and just try to prevent some things from happening. If you feel uncomfortable in a situation, leave the situation. If you feel uncomfortable talking to a person about certain things, don't say anything. There are so many preventative methods that I feel that can be put into play that a lot of people don't even think about. Don't go to the hotel room at 2:00 in the morning with a total stranger. That's maybe sending out the wrong message. And even though you might be saying yes with your mouth, you may not be saying yes in your mind. Yeah. And I actually talk about healing from that process, because there's been partners that I've had, especially in college, where I said yes with my body, but in my mind, I was like, I do not want to be here. I do not want to do this. And that's another thing of just admitting to myself and being able to heal that part that was hurt inside of me.
Mm-hmm. It's so funny. I love that chapter of your book. I haven't read it, but I love the context of what you're speaking to, because it's almost like giving other people permission to decide something new. And I found when I was young, I would go along with what other people were doing, whether that's, we're all going to the, hotel room at 2:00 in the morning. And now you're going to be with a bunch of guys you don't know and maybe a friend you don't really trust. It's okay to say no. It's okay to be like, I'm going home now. But I never, whether that was a lesson I needed to learn, probably. But I never felt I had the permission to stop in the middle of it and say, no, I'm out of here. That I never felt like I had the permission to do those certain things. Say, no, I'm not doing this. I'm going home, wherever that came from. So I think that's really beautiful.
Permission. That's a really interesting word to use too.
Yeah.
It is. Well, I think it's actually quite evocative. I made reference earlier to the various tribes that were part of it. And I think that's what the permission comes from. It comes from one or more of those tribes.
For sure. Yeah. And I like the whole context of your book, because me and my friends often talk about this, what we would tell our children, our daughters specifically, about sex. And there is a lot of things that I know now that I wish somebody would have said to me. Like one of the simple and most stupid things, and I'm just going to say it because I think it's important, is that it won't make them like you.
I talk about that in my book.
You know how many times that has come up? Like, I just wish somebody would have said that to me when I was a kid. Like, you shouldn't be using it as a weapon to get people to like you, or it's not going to make them fall in love with you. There was this dumb belief system that I had that all those things were true, and it was actually the opposite.
Yes.
I love that you're talking about this openly.
And someone asked me a question, that I feel pressured as a teen to have sex. And I told them, honestly, I didn't feel pressured. I was in a headspace where I just didn't understand everything.
Yeah.
And so that's the importance of the book, just to get to all people. It's going to teach the teen it's okay to wait. It's going to teach the middle-aged woman such as me it's okay to change. And it's going to also teach older women that it's okay to give your wisdom. My book is actually dedicated to my grandparents, and I say it's dedicated to my wisdom. I have had the privilege of having 11 grandparents in my life. I grew up with a lot of grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents. So a lot of wisdom was just poured into me, just in a great village. I was raised in a great village. It wasn't a perfect village, but it was a great village.
Well, I don't think there's any such thing as a perfect village, is there? I mean, seriously. Does one exist somewhere? If it does, I'm a little bit skeptical about it, but that's another thing.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going, because I would mess it all
up. They're all perfectly imperfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
The perfection of love, just being loved, being able to see love, being able to see people develop and to grow, the freedom. My family is every color of the rainbow. My family is rainbowed. It's just everywhere. We're everywhere, and we appreciate each other, and we love each other no matter what happens.
That's beautiful. That's a great way to wind up an hour of really fabulous conversation. But we got to get a couple of pieces of information from you before we wrap up here. Okay. So the first one is, we know about the book, and I imagine that could be found Amazon, Barnes & Noble, bookstores everywhere. I imagine it's that kind of a deal, right? Yeah, okay. But we're missing the other part. How do they reach Hashondra? How do they find you?
So I have made it very simple, because I am a simple, complex person. If they go to www.hashondra.me, that will link them to every part of my life. So like I said, I'm a nonprofit founder. You can go to My Mad Life through the Hashondra.me website. I'm also a marketing and branding specialist. You can go through the Pink Group website. I also do life consulting, Hashondra.me. That's on the Hashondra.me website. And then I also have my skill of braiding hair. So that's a passion as well. One that I had to embrace. It actually causes ministry. So need some hair braiding. I'm the girl.
There you go. Wow.
Very
yeah.
Cool.
You're a girl of many, many talents is what you are.
Yes. And then I also have my sea moss gummies, so those orders can be placed online as well.
Fantastic. I love that. One other thing I want to tell you too, like so many people, all the people who come onto the show, you're a giver, and givers need to be reminded of something that's really cool about them, because there are many people who you'll never meet, you'll never see, who you have influenced maybe on this podcast, on other podcasts, in your book, in other writings, and so on and so forth. And I think we need to be recognized for that. So thank you for all the people that you've never met, that you've never seen, that you've helped in your life, and that you're continuing to help in their lives.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We appreciate it too. And Jody Lynn, last word goes to you, as I so often like to do. What's your final take on what we've been talking about here?
My final take, final count.
This is like the final frontier, right? But this is the final take.
The final take. Yeah, exactly. I want to acknowledge, the bravery and courage it takes to look at your life through a different lens, and look at it with complete transparency. And the way that you speak about your journey, I can see that fearlessness coming through, and that is a beautiful reminder and opportunity for others to, take little pieces of that into their own life and be courageous and look through that same lens so they can have a different life than the one that they're currently in today. So thank you for that, and thank you for that light that you bring to the world.
Thank you both.
We loved having you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jody Lynn. Thank you, podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.